This is a book, one of the series that I've been writing on lost bits of business. You might know my books on Baker Chocolate, Howard Johnson's, Jordan Marsh. I just finished S.S. Pierce yesterday. But this book on the Christmas tree shop was something that really did resonate with all of us. I bet everyone here went to the Christmas tree shop. More than once a month, I bet. But the whole idea was the woman who founded it, Doreen Bilezikian, and her late husband, Chuck Bilezikian, lived down the street from us in Alsterville. And of course, nowhere near the money that they have. I have a lovely house. But they said to me one time when they were talking to me, would you write a history of the Christmas tree shop? Well, when it went out of business in 2023, I'm sure you were as shocked as I was. And the whole concept was, I must have spent $100 a year there. How could they go out of business? Well, when it was started in 1970, it was basically a hard job. But by the period of 2000, it was so well known, it had over 23 stores throughout New England and New York. Seen here on the cover is the Sagamore store. This was on the adjacent bridge, the Sagamore Bridge, and when it was built, it was supposed to be the largest Irish cottage in the world, with a real thatch roof and a windmill that truly worked. The Christmas tree shops was iconic, well publicized, and also well attended. People loved it, and their logo was, "Don't you just love a bargain?" Well, the company dated back to 1946. The Christmas tree shop, now remember this is singular, not plural, was started in 1946 by Charles and Alice Matthews, who moved from New York to Cape Cod and purchased a small store at the corner of Route 6A and Willow Street in Yarmouthport. And the property included two smaller shops, the Wayside Shop run by Catherine Gorley and Lavinia's Window run by Gladys Beasley. And both shops were considered antique and curiosity shops. The Christmas tree shop offered Christmas-themed items such as decorations, ornaments, and small gifts, and the Matthews opened the shop on Memorial Day and would close after Labor Day. And as the Massachusetts Blue laws did not allow business on Sundays, it was a struggle. The business went bankrupt in 1961 and was bought at auction by Don Winter, and he continued operation of the shop until 1970. Well, seen here, which was called the Barn Shop, the Christmas tree shop was something that was chock-a-block. And when you walked through the front door, the Matthews didn't say welcome, they said Merry Christmas. And in that instance, it was something that people thought of as a very unique and iconic store. The building was originally built in 1865 by Dexter Payne and was a general store, and he lived above the shop. Seen here on the roof, there was a Santa Claus in a red sleigh with reindeer. You never knew what you would find. But, of course, the whole idea was, in the chapter I called Do You Want to Buy a Business?, Chuck and Doreen Bilezikian started a store in 1970 that would eventually expand to 23 stores throughout New England and New York by 2003. The Christmas tree shops expanded in areas that not only had a large population, but where many of the people were already aware and shopped at them on Cape Cod. In 1970, the story of the Christmas tree shops began when they traveled for a July 4th vacation on Cape Cod. And while there, Chuck had planned to meet with Don Winter of Yarmouthport to try and sell excess inventory from the Cambridge Coffee, Tea, and Spice House where he worked. Winter owned the Christmas tree shop, which he had bought in 1961 at auction after the Matthews declared bankruptcy, and the store was in the closeout business, buying overstock items and at a low cost and selling them at a bargain. And after meeting with Chuck, Winter casually asked, "Do you want to buy a business?" Doesn't seem very nice. But Chuck and Doreen thought it over, and it seemed not only feasible but exciting. It was something they could do together, and in early September 1970, they made a $10,000 down payment that included money from credit cards, and they became the owners of the Christmas tree shop. In that way, their first bit of publicity was to rename it the Christmas tree shops. It had the front shop, the barn shop, and the back shop. And these three individual buildings, which were actually connected with an underground tunnel, were actually advertised as offering Christmas cards and decorations, English bone china, silver, stainless steel, crystal, music boxes, stationery, jams and jellies, candles, soap, toys, furniture, and wall decor, all at half the usual price. One never knew what he or she would find. And in that instance, seen here in an interior photograph of 1970, Chuck Bilezikian, sporting a pipe with his dog Pooch, is seen in the Christmas tree shop in Yarmouthport. The Christmas tree shops would begin by offering bargain household items, by buying up overstocked and discontinued items from manufacturers and other discounted prices that would in turn be sold at the store at a bargain. This was something in this instance that became Cape Cod's famous Christmas shops. It's a must. And here, on the interior of what had once been Dexter Payne's General Store, they had knotty pine wood planking on the walls. They also had shelving that had one of this and 12 of that. It was something you never knew what you would find, and if you saw it and liked it, you should buy it on the spot. Well, during that period of time, they parlayed this into something that really became an attractive business. They would offer sometimes things such as a Lilla Solifer vase. Well, this display offers that vase, an 8-inch high vase that was 24% lead crystal and sold at the bargain price of $3.99 versus $5.99 in gift shops. Lillis is French for lilac, and Solifer is French for a vase designed to hold a single flower. Well, as you can see, they have two shelves, probably around 30 vases. But if you didn't want a vase, maybe you wanted on the top shelf a 4-inch salad bowl, 39 cents a piece or 3 for $1. How could you refuse? During this period, we would see that it wasn't just the Christmas season. Though they basically were known as the Christmas tree shop, they tried to downplay it because they were open year-round by the mid-1970s. Seen on the left is a beautiful Christmas tree decorated with candy canes. And it says North Pole's finest candy canes, sweet-tasting treats. Well, these weren't just any candy canes. These were made by hand. And they were actually 50 cents a piece or 3 for $1. You also see in the background huge numbers of glass ornaments that were imported from Hong Kong. These were inexpensive, but could make your tree quite unique. But during the 1973 to 1977 period, every Saturday during the holiday season, they would invite Mrs. Santa Claus to come to the stores. Seen here on the right, she's seated on a chair with one of her elves, and she would actually visit with every child that came to the store. Because they did publicity, it seemed that anyone with children within driving distance would arrive. There might be 500 to 1,000 people in line. She explained Santa Claus was too busy in the North Pole making the toys that he was due to deliver on Christmas Eve. So she encouraged them to tell her what they wanted for Christmas, and she would tell Santa Claus when she got back to the North Pole that evening. This was something that was incredible, and because the children got a wonderful, joyous meeting with Mrs. Claus, it was 1 out of every 3 people that made a purchase. So the Christmas tree shop had a very good advertising and marketing aspect. And seeing here by 1975, we realized that the Christmas tree shops advertised that shopping at the stores was literally a bargain for all seasons, which was their logo motto at that time. All seasons, not just Christmas. The stores would become open year-round in the early 1970s, which had a huge impact on sales. But on the upper portion, it says a bargain for all seasons with a map of Cape Cod. Now, in this instance, by 1975, you had to realize from that one store in Yarmouthport, there were now 8 stores. That's in a 5-year period. And they had locations in Hyannis, West Yarmouth, Yarmouthport, Sagamore, West Dennis, Orleans, Falmouth, and the first one off Cape in Pembroke. The growth was phenomenal. And it wasn't just things bought at liquidation sales. Many things came from Spags. Does anybody remember Spags in Worcester? Spags couldn't sell it. Maybe the Christmas tree shop could sell it. But they also had local artisans that might make stained glass ornaments. And these things sold. During that period of time, you realize by 1977, they were doing these newspaper advertisements that was a supplement to the Patriot Ledger, the Cape Cod Sunday Times, and the Enterprise, and would feasibly reach 250,000 readers. The Christmas tree shop said, let's celebrate value. First quality merchandise at savings of up to 50% or more. Well, on the left-hand side is that supplement. It wasn't really a supplement. It was a 12 by 15-inch supplement that was 25 pages long. And it showed on the cover things that you could actually buy to not only make your home more attractive, but they were bargains. How about a caned rocking chair for $19.99? Wooden duck decoys, or a Chinese umbrella stand. They were not only unique, but they were really something you could use. And seen on the right was a detail of one of the inner pages, and this was actually French crystal. It was imported from France, and each piece was engraved with a clipper ship. You see decanters, hurricane lamps, different sized glasses, and what a perfect thing to decorate your house, especially on Cape Cod with a maritime theme, to impress family and friends. People realized in that point, by 1977, the company, which had employees that didn't have a cookie-cutter job, it was not 9 to 5, and everyone, including the owners, had to do what was necessary. At that point, they decided that the company needed a mission statement. And they said, Christmas Tree Shops strive to be the premier value retailer by offering a unique and exciting shopping experience. We are committed to exceeding our customers' expectations in service, value, and selection. We foster a culture that sponsors growth and career opportunities for our employees in an atmosphere of respect and courtesy. And the Christmas Tree Shop's foundation for success is based on retailing excellence and sound fiscal policy. It outlined not only what the owners thought the company should be, but what all employees should actually think. But you realize that these employees went the gamut from not just the store managers, buyers who traveled around the world, people who stocked the shelves, cashiers, but they also included the truck drivers. They were the unsung heroes, and here, beside a red Christmas tree shop van, which was bought from Filene's in Boston for $800, these men could load into the truck the things from the warehouse that would be taken to one of the 8 different stores. One store might get 5 of Solifer vase, or a dozen at another. So the concept was, if they didn't have a large stock, you might find something at one store that you would not find at the other. This served for about a 15-year period. But by the period of the early 1980s, the whole concept was the company was now importing sea containers from different ports, both in Asia as well as Europe. And seen here, these cabs were driven by the truck drivers and brought to Moran terminals in South Boston. These sea containers could be filled with brassware from India, Portuguese Majolica ware, English bone china, or if you remember, the Nantucket baskets that were actually brought from Poland. Well, the whole concept was the warehouse was insufficient, and they built a warehouse that was the largest on Cape Cod. And we realized the whole concept was that these people, as I mentioned, had different jobs. But one group of people that were called the Flying Squad was one of the more interesting. And this is a photograph of them getting their wings. If you notice, they actually have angels' wings. Well, the Flying Squad would travel to help with stocking a new store that was to open. They would also help any store that had an approaching advertisement shoot, or if a store was planning a large floor plan change. And they could ask if the Flying Squad could come and help. Joyce Adams, she's on the lower left-hand side, said that the squad offered a chance of moving up with the company. traveling to different stores, meeting new people, learning new skills, being involved from the beginning on a new venture for Christmas tree shops. Well, when I looked at this, I called that the Christmas Tree Shop MBA program. They would take people who showed an interest to learn the business from the bottom up. And many of these people did go on to become store managers and also work in the corporate office, but many of them became buyers. And like I say, they went throughout the world finding bargains that we would buy at the Christmas Tree Shop. But you might also remember that every person working there wore a smock. Some were blue, some were green, and some were red. And this is Devin Flynn, who was supposed to be quite a character from what I've been told. He's standing in front of the safety board. He always had something to say to people, including customers, and he was always away from what he was supposed to be doing. But the idea was if you wore a blue smock, maybe you would ensure that backup cashiers are called whenever there are 3 people in line. If you had a green smock, maybe it was to thank the customer for shopping with us. Or if you wore a red smock, maybe it was to smile and greet every customer that I encounter. Well, many of these people who were employees and had an average ratio of 17 years of employment between 1970 and 2003 obviously radiated happiness. Everyone smiled because it was a good job. Many people realized in some instances the things they sold were hoops. And this was called Cape Cod Air. And I have to admit, I did buy a bottle of Cape Cod Air. This was sold by the Christmas tree shops as a whimsical souvenir for tourists visiting Cape Cod. And they were bottles containing genuine Cape Cod Air that were made by the Christmas tree shops. And there was a proviso that, as customers were cautioned, to avoid contamination by ordinary air, do not remove the cork after crossing the Cape Cod Canal. And these bottles of air, said to be genuinely fresh from the sea, sold by the boxful. And the labels were affixed to the bottles by Gregory and Jeffrey Bilezikian, the sons of the owner. And of course, they were joined by their friends Nan, Beth, Susie, and Jane Johnson. Well, the children would take a bottle that were made by the dozens, affix a label, and cork it. In that instance, they were probably lured to the table to do this with the idea that they would have pizza for dinner. So the Cape Cod Air was something really quite successful, but so too wasn't the legend of the pickle. And seen on the left-hand side, a 4-inch green glass pickle at $1.99 could make or break your Christmas tree. It's said to start a tradition that will surely last. Here's a short story about a pickle of glass. The night before Christmas, it's hung on the tree, and while everyone's sleeping, it's done secretly. And on Christmas morning, when you arise, the first one who finds it will get a surprise. A family tradition for all to share. You'll look for the pickle year after year. Did anyone do this? No? Yeah, some people? I never heard of it. But they also had bags of Santa's Magic Christmas dust that were offered for sale. Well, as you can see, these were little bags. They were run up on a sewing machine in the early years, and they were filled with 2 scoops of glitter and 2 scoops of oats. And they sold for $3.99. But the tag said, to all good girls and boys. On Christmas Eve, sprinkle the contents on the lawn or snow. The glitter will shine in the moonlight and help me find your house. My reindeer love the smell of oats, and if they are hungry, they can have a quick snack. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. Well, what child, even if you had 4 siblings, would leave the store without a bag of Santa's Magic Christmas dust? These were big sales. And in a lot of ways, when things didn't sell, the Bilezikians came up with an idea that they would take a simple brown lunch bag, fill it with a few different things, and in some bags add a $1 bill, a $5 bill, or a $10 bill. And these were available at $1. So you could simply take it, and if you won the $10 bill, every time you went, you would still take one of those bags. And it got rid of merchandise that wouldn't sell. Well, during that period, they sold a variety of things. My whole idea was greeting cards were my favorite, but they also had bird food, suet, dog treats, and toys. And the idea in some instances here for the knitters on Cape Cod, these wire display bins had Lion Brand yarn, priced at $1.99 per skein. Lion Brand yarn has been on the market since 1878, and the company is today a fifth-generation family-owned business that has long offered different types of yarn. Some of their most popular yarns are homespun, thick and quick, fun fur, Vanna's Choice, named for Vanna White, and Woolies. Well, look at the bins, different colors, but also different types of yarn. And at $1.99, you could have somebody rolling a ball of yarn so you could knit to your pleasure. In that instance, they would also have things that would be displays for whatever the season. So whether it was St. Patrick's Day or Valentine's Day or Halloween or Thanksgiving, this was a summer display. And they placed a picnic table, and on it, galvanized tin tubs. These had Cape Cod, a heart, and the Cape Cod arms stenciled onto it. And they're filled with red lobsters, orcas, whales, and little teddy bears. But they could be reused with ice to ice your beverage of choice. But within the aspect was, this was Cape Cod, and what was more Cape Cod than Cape Cod taffy? Well, if you're like me, anyone over the age of 50 does not eat taffy, whether you want to keep a filling or a tooth. But at $1.99 with 21 different flavors, you could bring it home to family and friends as a memento of your vacation on Cape Cod. They also produced this, nautical-themed items. And these were 3-foot-high lighthouses. They were solar-powered, and you could buy it at $19.99 and place it at the end of your driveway or your walkway so that you could actually see your house in the dark. Here on this display, you had things such as fish for the wall decorations, tins, as well as even steering wheels. These were perfect either for your Cape Cod vacation or your house on Cape Cod. And people realized in a lot of ways, not only was it a bargain, but it was something you could really use. Well, many tourists as well as Cape Cod residents stopped at the Christmas tree shops to pick up essentials for their vacation on Cape Cod. In addition to snacks, candy, paper plates, and napkins, a beach chair was a necessity to relax on the beach and get some sun, and one stared at the ocean and the far-off horizon. The little boy on the upper left actually is choosing a color-coordinated shovel and sand bucket, something that came as a set for $3.99. But on the lower right, this brother and sister could choose from a variety of these wonderful boogie boards that they could use at the beach. These were inexpensive, and even if they were only used for a week on vacation, they were something that was affordable. Well, during the holidays, as I mentioned, they did wonderful displays. Some of these Cape Cod Christmas tree shop employees had quite a flair. Here, they've created these boxes that actually have a variety of different scarecrows, silk flowers, and of course pumpkins. And we see 4-foot-tall scarecrows with flowered hats, and of course 3-tiered tin pumpkins. These were wonderful, and it gave you a little bit of an idea as to what you could do to decorate your front door or your window boxes or even the buffet in the dining room. Everything was available and beautifully done. But it was also the fact during the holiday season, one of the biggest sales were nutcrackers. And according to German folklore, nutcrackers bring good luck to the family and protect the home. It is said that they represent strength and power and watches over the family, keeping evil spirits and danger away. Well, on the left-hand side, they had shelves of different size and grades of nutcrackers, different uniforms, different colors. I bought one, $3.99, and I thought it was a real nutcracker. So when I placed a walnut in his nut-cracking mouth, it broke the mouth and not the nut. Of course, it looked good on the mantelpiece, but it was something that they offered by the dozens. This button was distributed to customers by the Christmas tree shops, and this is the period of the early 1980s, and proclaims the new slogan, "Don't you just love a bargain?" This catchy slogan was used in newspaper flyers as well as a jingle on radio and television commercials. Customer Estelle Zimmerman remembers that when she first saw these television commercials, she said, "I saw way too many things that I wanted. I would definitely come out of the store broke." In the mid-1990s, Christmas tree shops often introduced a series of commercials in which the chain's customers were recorded showcasing items they purchased, paired with the soon-to-be famous jingle, "Don't you just love a bargain?" And the jingle still resonates with many of us. We would also see above every door of every Christmas tree shop this wooden sign that actually said, "Don't you just love a bargain?" along with the company logo, which was a red sleigh with a freshly cut evergreen tree. Well, when Chuck and Doreen Bilezikian started the Christmas tree shops in 1970, they could never have imagined that the company would grow to 23 stores by 2003. Their hard work, strong drive, mutual support, and business acumen were vital in the company's success, but they also realized that their employees were an important part of the continued growth of the company. One shopper confessed, "I'm particularly intrigued by the fact that I can find all kinds of doodads that I never knew I needed until I started poking through the merchandise. How did they know I needed a teapot shaped like a banana?" And of course, the stores. Now, between 1970 and 1975, most of the stores were ready-built. They were part of a shopping mall. But beginning in 1975, the Bilezikians wanted to make their stores unique. Now, they bought a piece of land at the corner of Camp Street and Route 28 in Hyannis. This was adjacent to the railroad tracks that connected Hyannis and South Station in Boston. And they decided that the new store would look like a railroad depot. Not only did it have a little tower, but it had a wraparound piazza, and it looked like the old railroad stations on Cape Cod. This was something that was a little bit different, but they took it to a new height. Seen here are Jeffrey and Gregory Bilezikian, sons of the owners, and they pose on car 2639 wearing their railroad conductor caps. In November of 1975, Chuck bought 4 railroad cars, formerly owned by the New Haven Line, which had declared bankruptcy. And during the sale, Chuck insisted that he and his son should be allowed to ride the train from Middleborough to Hyannis, where he placed them on his property. This was Christmas Crossing, the railroad, opened in 1977. So not only did you have a store that looked like a waiting station, there were 4 train cars directly behind them. What was more unique than that? And seen here in Falmouth, this building was supposed to be like a French bistro. It had bronze awnings, a wonderful roof, along with the Christmas tree shop at the top. Well, the Falmouth Christmas tree shop was opened in the summer of 1980. Falmouth had become a tourist area and summer resort in the mid-20th century. Customer Dan Roach said that the Christmas tree shop in Falmouth is one of our traditional shops when we visit the area. We love the amount of home decor, seasonal goods, teas, snacks, and beauty products that we can buy at this store. We also appreciate the fact that the prices are reasonable. Each store took on new meaning, and this was the Orleans store, built at the junction of Route 6A and 28 as you came into Orleans from Easton. The Cape Cod Times reported that the Orleans store opened its doors the weekend of Mother's Day without so much as one advertisement announcing the fact. The parking lot was jammed. Well, it wasn't just built to look like an Orleans sea captain's house. This was built on the site of the old Sprague Mansion. Reginald Sprague had the first Howard Johnson restaurant franchise that he built on the front lawn, which is now Bulldog Pub, but between 1935 and 1972, he would run with his family. So in many instances, each of these places took on not only a new meaning, but had great historical associations. The only store that was located in a mall was the Holyoke store. And not only did they paint a mural of the history of Holyoke, Massachusetts on the wall, but on the right-hand side, they had a hot air balloon. Now in the basket is a 4-foot-tall man holding a flag. This would ascend to the height of the ceiling every 15 minutes and then descend. It did nothing, but there would be hundreds of people standing there watching the little man go to the ceiling and return down below. Unique, unusual, but it was a great attraction. And even here, the Boston Herald commented on the new store in Lynnfield with its red and white striped lighthouse. This was a local version of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Unfortunately, it didn't lean. But do you remember the Ship restaurant on Route 1? You can see it on the far left-hand side. That was an icon within itself. But Route 1 was something. Another one was the Hilltop Cactus. It was a great place for kitsch and iconic trade signs. But this had a nautical theme, and you could even see lifeboats suspended on the right-hand side. But this was not just decoration. This was a true working lighthouse. And you can see it was pretty tall, but at night the lights went on and it would circle the entire area. And every minute it beeped out, "I love you." So in that instance, people looked at this whizzing by on Route 1 and realized that the company was making things really quite fun. And the Salem Eagle Tribune reported that as with each Christmas tree shop, the Salem, New Hampshire store will possess its own motif, a horse racetrack look. And the storefront will have elongated spires and towers similar to those found at nearby Rockingham Park Racetrack. So they took something from every community in which they built, and it made people realize that probably the most iconic of all of them was the Sagamore store. Well, this was built of stone and cement, and it was thought to look like an Irish cottage. But when it was built, it not only had a real thatched roof, but the windmill actually had blades that turned. So this was something in some instances that attracted the attention of many people crossing the Sagamore Bridge while it was being built. I don't have a number, but I'm sure there were at least a dozen accidents of people watching this because the curve is a little sharp. But the Sagamore Christmas tree shop, according to the Cape Cod Times, had the largest thatch roof in the world. Thatching is the craft of weaving a roof with such things as straw, water reed, rushes, or heather, and then layering it to shed water away from the inner roof. Known as the world's first traveling thatchers, Michael, William, and A.J. Cahill were from the village of Clare-Galway, Ireland. They thatched the 24,000 square foot roof that is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest thatch roof in the world. But it was not just local attention that this new store was getting, as the Washington Post published a commentary that said, "This unique retail establishment boasts Disney-esque architecture of a humongous artificial thatch roof and windmill." It might have been Disney-esque, but it certainly was not artificial thatch. Well, when this building was completed, it won a Build Massachusetts Architecture Award. So you began to see they weren't just places to shop, they were becoming part of the community. And of course, probably one of the most elegant was the new store in Hyannis at the Hyannis Rotary. Ed Mullen, who was the right-hand man for the Bilezikian, said, "To design the new Hyannis store, Chuck, Doreen, and I went to Disney World. We sat on Main Street for days like little kids, studying the buildings and working up a Victorian look for Hyannis. And when the store was done, we returned to Orlando to receive a national award for Best Exterior Store Design of 1999. So you begin to realize what a great place to go to find a bargain, but it was a little bit of a boon to actually see this as you approached it at dusk, lit up, lights inside. But the building in Hyannis had some wonderful features. Do you remember the clock tower?
Yep.
It's still there and it still rings on the hour, but the Hyannis store had this four-sided clock that was manufactured by the E. Howard Clock Company in Boston. They, of course, had made this between 1910 and 1920 for a now demolished meeting house. The Bilezikians thought it would be a nice feature to see it not only keeping time, but also creating an attractive feature. But it also had a Verdun Company glockenspiel that was installed below the clock and was a unique attraction that delighted people. It sported moving figures at different times of the day, and the glockenspiel played three cheers for the Red, White, and Blue, Old Man River, and Morning Has Broken, among other songs. As you see, these four projecting things directly below the clock were where the figures would come out and dance as they went from door to door. It was based on the clock in Prague, and though they were saints, these were figures from nursery rhymes. There was also a carillon at Hyannis, and it created music that greeted arriving shoppers as well as bidding farewell to shoppers bringing their bargains to their cars. The carillon was composed of a large bell and 24 smaller bells ranging in 2 octaves. The large bell rings every hour on the hour and was cast in 1942, and the 24 smaller bells were cast in Holland in 1989. So you had a clock, a glockenspiel, and a carillon. What better way to attract attention? And people loved it. When they opened a store in South Portland, Maine, it was due to open on a Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. Somebody who was working in the store doing last-minute adjustments looked out the front door and took this photograph at 6:30 a.m. These are people who are not only lined up and everyone has their cart at the ready, but you realize one of the things that they did was to expand into areas that they knew were going to be popular. Do you remember when you shopped there and the cashier would say, "What is your zip code?" Yeah. That was something that was used in that instance to realize people from South Portland, Maine were actually shopping at the Cape Cod stores. So why not open a shop there? Well, in a lot of ways, the logo was something that also attracted people's attention. A red sleigh, a freshly cut evergreen tree, and the font, Christmas Tree Shops, with the eye having an ornament, was something that became readily identifiable, not just by adults, but children. And it was also the sign that there was a bargain waiting for you. Many people realized by the 30th anniversary of the company in 1970 to 2000, that they would have a party in the warehouse parking lot. 9,000 people were there, family, friends, and employees, and their wives and husbands. And seen here, the Bilezikians arrive with Ed Mullen on a red sleigh pulled by 2 Percheron horses. Well, it was in August, so thankfully the sleigh had wheels, but they arrived to the cheering public. How many people realized that they had started in debt? But the idea here, by 2000, they were making millions of dollars net every single year. Well, one can only imagine the sense of pride the Bilezikians had after 3 decades of nurturing and growing a small business into a multi-million-dollar company with thousands of employees. The Christmas Tree Shops were one of the largest employers on Cape Cod by the 1990s. And seen here, Doreen Bilezikian is cutting a 3-tiered cake, 1 tier for each decade. It was also the fact that employees, as I mentioned earlier, had a 17-year ratio of employment between 1970 and 2003. Well, a group of employees smile as they transform themselves into Christmas Tree Shop elves, with Christmas stocking hats and holding a variety of stuffed elves, all available in the Christmas decoration aisle. These elves had a variety of faces and were just the right size to hold or put on the mantle. But look at the legs of the elves above, wearing the same red and white striped stockings, but larger than life. People loved it, and they loved in that instance that everyone had a smile. But during that period, the Bilezikians decided to reward employees, beginning with a 5th-year anniversary present. Well, for their 5th-year work anniversary, employees of the Christmas tree shop would receive a stick pin, or a tie pin for gentlemen, with an oval scrimshaw edition of the company's logo, a red sleigh with a green Christmas tree. These attractive pins were handmade and hand-engraved, being made from repurposed ivory keys sourced from discarded pianos. Martha Pumfret owned Christmas Scrimshaw by Marcy, which proved to be a great success as it carried the traditions of the 19th century sailors' tradition of etching scenes upon ivory, bone, and whale teeth. And Marcy became prolific. Now, the whole concept was she would make these pieces by the hundreds. For the 10th anniversary, a woman would receive a Tiffany sterling silver Venetian link bracelet, and for the 15th anniversary, a gold-filled watch. The whole idea was these were something that not only you could wear with pride, but they commended you for the amount of time you had worked at the company. And seen here at the Pembroke store, employees posed for a group photograph after having collected a multitude of blue shopping carts from the parking lot. Remember, they did not have cookie-cutter jobs. Obviously, it was a necessary chore, but they arranged the shopping carts in such a creative way with the large company logo seen in the background. Well, in many ways, everyone came together, especially in the holidays when it became busier than normal. This is an employee, and I was assured that his mustache and beard are real, but unlike the elves, he dressed like Santa Claus. And we knew where he was because if you look at his wrists, he has sleigh bells on both wrists. People loved it, and they loved to dress up. Well, this decal was designed by Dori Bilezikian, but was never used. It was not only fun, but it would have made shoppers feel important as an authorized Christmas tree shopper when they placed it on their automobile bumper. Many people came to the Christmas tree shops on a regular basis, often with family and friends as a day out, exploring the aisles of the store, never knowing what one might find. And in that way, many people did come. You might remember going through the front door. On the right-hand side was a seasonal display. It might be wreaths, as we see here for the fall season, or the holiday, Christmas, but you might also realize the wonderful aroma of cinnamon. It seemed to have a little bit of a drug-like effect on people. But how do you know these two people have just arrived? Exactly. I'm glad you're paying attention. The empty cart. Well, they smile, but you know by the time they got to the cash register, it might be filled to the brim. People loved it, and people would shop every single aisle. But seen here, after a morning of shopping for bargains at the Sagamore Christmas tree shop, customers Judy Shanahan and Nancy Peters take a well-deserved break, enjoying a rest, while sitting in the sun on a white plastic garden bench priced at $99.99. Well, in that instance, shoppers leave the Christmas tree shop in Albany, New York, with bags of bargains during the holiday season. The woman on the right has a shopping bag that says, "'Tis the season to be jolly." Employee Kathy Cameron remembered that Chuck and Doreen put their trust in their employees. I work with so many creative display artists and problem solvers. We did beautiful displays with just a few fixtures. And Chuck and Doreen brought us the most unique products and new trends. It was easy to highlight their finds. Beginning in 1975, the Bilezikians went to Hong Kong and sent back thousands of things that would be provided every single year. But the idea was the displays would show all of the wonderful things of the season. But there was a problem. The company in 2003 was approached by Bed Bath & Beyond. They weren't looking to sell, but when they discussed it with the officials from Bed Bath & Beyond and the fact that they offered $200,000 in cash, the Bilezikians took it. They stayed with the company for 3 years as consultants, but they also made the very smart move. They only sold the name of the business, not the stores. And to this day, all of the stores, in addition to new purchases, are held under Turtle Rock Properties, which actually leases it to Bed Bath & Beyond, or today to places like as Ocean State Job Lot or Ace Hardware. But in November 2020, Bed Bath & Beyond sold the Christmas tree shops to Handle Holdings, a private company founded in 2020 for an undisclosed amount. Later research proved it was $475 million. In November 2021, the company quickly opened 19 pop-up holiday-themed stores across the United States, and these stores remained open through January of 2022. It was an unfortunate time. It was during the pandemic. But to open pop-up holiday-themed stores, it could be in the corner of this lovely auditorium. But it didn't have the same cachet as going to a Christmas tree shop. And sales fell. However, there seemed to be a problem as some stores were reported to be underproducing and were not as profitable as they had once been. Reuters reported that United States bankruptcy judge Thomas Horan had converted the company's Chapter 11 bankruptcy to a Chapter 7 liquidation. Horan ordered a court-appointed trustee to oversee the process to ensure that employees were paid for hours worked during the recent going-out-of-business sales. And during the hearing, a lawyer for the Christmas tree shop said that store closing sales fell $14 million short of revenue projections. The problem was Handle Holdings, when they purchased the company, also assumed the debt of Bed Bath & Beyond. That debt was $49 million. During the pandemic, they could not refinance the debt, and they were paying 29% interest. So when they say that the $49 million debt had a sales of $14 million short, they were only able to pay off $35 million. So the company is still obviously repaying it. But when you probably saw it on the news, just like I did, you were probably shocked. CBS News in Boston in August of 2023 said, Wall Street Journal, Christmas tree shops preparing to file for bankruptcy protection. How could this happen? This was a very profitable store and a chain that was now 90 stores throughout 37 states in the United States. They offered everything under the sun. But how could they go bankrupt? Well, because it was a Chapter 7 liquidation, it meant that not only the merchandise was for sale, but even the displays that held the merchandise was for sale. Lighting fixtures, everything was for sale. It started off as 50% off. I can't imagine these cash register women actually having smiles. They were losing their jobs, but the store closing sale brought thousands of people. And you began to see in some instances the things were just incredible. On the left-hand side on this door it said, all sales final, no returns. Last days, today is the final day. But it says in a handwritten note to our loyal customers, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. It's magnanimous, but the whole concept was, the last chapter is called A Lament for the Christmas Tree Shops. On August 12th of 2023, the Christmas tree shops were closed after massive liquidation sales. The Christmas tree shops were well-known bargain stores selling food, toys, household furnishings, and Christmas decorations in stores that often resembled cottages, mansions, and lighthouses. The closure of these once popular stores was incredulous. And as Gene Cooper of East Hampton poignantly said, every time you come, there's always a lot of people here, and everybody comes for the sales. I'm sure it's going to be missed by a lot of people, me especially. It was the end of an era for the Christmas tree shops. Well, by the period of August, it was on every newscast and every newspaper, and saying goodbye, shoppers lament loss of store. No longer were there only 3 people in line. Now it was said that it was over an hour to go through the cash register to actually take your purchase home. People looked in some ways to the founders. They had sold the business in 2003, and they did well. But they actually had their party loss at that time. So when it happened in 2023, Chuck was deceased. His widow would say in some instances it was a shock, but it was nowhere near the shock that they got when they sold it. As one can see from this book, Chuck and Doreen Bilezikian were a strong team, and their marriage and work ethic were as strong as they were. Having taken a risk in 1970 to buy a failing business in Yarmouthport, to selling the company in 2003 to Bed Bath & Beyond, they showed not only how hard work, drive, and determination could ensure the success of a small business, but also that success was to be earned and not merely given. Working long days, unpacking boxes, stocking shelves, and arranging merchandise in the evenings was hard work, but they persevered. They grew the small seasonal business into a thriving year-round business that became a destination on Cape Cod. Now, in the instance of the book, yes, we did love a bargain and we love the Christmas tree shops. This is something that really chronicles a part of our lives. But it's important to realize that 50 years from now, our grandchildren are going to not know what we're talking about. I hope we're all here in 50 years. But the whole concept is, this was not just a chain of bargain stores. This was a place to go with family and friends, and of course, maybe have coffee before and lunch afterwards. It was a destination, and in this instance, it's a wonderful memory from the past. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.